Well, there's not much finesse when it comes to the food. I shouldn't say it that way. The food is very, very spicy, very hot and spicy. You'd probably burn your mouth the first few times you try it, because they use a lot of the red cayenne pepper, a lot of strange flavors or different flavors than what we might be used to here. Pickled things like pickled radishes. You can imagine pickled radishes, okay? That's kind of good. And pickled radishes soaked in red cayenne pepper. You can really get a charge out of that. So it's very different. It's a different flavor. It takes a while to get used to. And we all enjoy it, but it's taken some time to get used to. In our school cafeteria, we can choose either Western menu or Eastern menu, Korean menu. And I would say by now, we almost always get the Korean menu. It's healthier, it's good food, but it took a while to get used to. Some people say, well, don't they use the Chinese alphabet? Well, no, it's the Korean alphabet. It's created around 700 years ago. It has 24 characters. It's actually quite simple compared to Japanese or Chinese. It's quite easy to learn, at least to read the letters and the sounds and so forth. We know a little bit of Korean. All of our teaching and all of our classes are in English in school, so we don't need to know that much, but we're learning to get around the taxi or the marketplace or 안녕하세요, 감사합니다, whatever, hello, thank you. It's all to be polite, and we're going to continue to learn. But it isn't a real impetus upon us to learn as quick as possible. So, in recent history, many of you would know about the Korean War. Canada took part in the Korean War on behalf of the United Nations. And a lot of people don't realize, though, that it never ended in a peace treaty. It just ended in an armistice or a ceasefire. So all these years, technically, these two countries are still at war. And every now and then something flares up, something happens, and there's a big kerfuffle, and then, well, things kind of settle down again. A lot of times there's a big concern here in the West, but in the East, they kind of take it in stride to some degree. We have friends who lived there for 14 years, and they said, well, every spring there's kind of like a saber rattling. It's almost like a ritual. Every spring there's a big war of words for a while, and then things calm down again. Sometimes in the fall there's another thing that happens, and they all calm down for the winter time. Then the spring it happens again. So they saw it over and over again. I don't want to minimize it. It's just that it's a matter of, it's a case to pray for them. But it's something that people have seen for a long, long time. If you were to go to the demilitarized zone, or sometimes called the DMZ, you would find there's a strip of land right across the peninsula, right across from East Sea to the other sea, and that's 4 kilometers wide. And that is a very, very heavily guarded, highly militarized region. And there's about 2 million soldiers along that border. So, yes, that's a serious matter. There's always a concern that something can happen, but they've seen it for a long time, used to it. This is a building at the DMZ here, and actually the soldiers on our side are in South Korea, and the far side is North Korea. And if you go into that building, you'll find a large wooden table, and that is the table where they signed the armistice back in 1953. And one side of the table, South Korea. The other side of the table, North Korea. So as tourists go in there, people all want to stand on the other side, just to say they've been to North Korea. They've only been about 3 feet. But anyway, so one tour will go in, and they get out, and the tour will come from the north, and they'll go in. But it is still a very tense place, and it's quite an experience to go there. North Korea, you've heard about in the news. Some things happened in the last 6 months or so. There was a change in leadership. There was an attempt to launch a satellite, and they've done a lot of other things in the military. They really put all their money into the military in the north. It's a very, very poor country, and it's kind of like a throwback to the old Stalinist countries in Russia or Eastern Europe. Young people spend, many years in the military. So young women even, 2 years in the military. And we're also praying for this new leader, Kim Jong-un, in the center there. He's probably about 30 years old. He's supreme leader, and it's a nuclear-armed state. Well, what's going to happen in the years to come? He was educated for a couple of years in Switzerland, so people are hoping that he's had a little bit of a taste of other kinds of ways of doing things, and will try somehow to loosen up what's happening in that country and make things more free. So that's what we're praying for. We're praying for Kim Jong-un and praying for the North. We believe God has a plan for them. A lot of people don't know that back in 1903, 1904, there was a major revival that took place and swept across North Korea. And at one time there were 3,000 churches in North Korea, while there was only about 300 in the south. It was called the Jerusalem of the East, Pyongyang, the capital. It was called the Jerusalem of the East, but then the Japanese took over and the church was squelched and began to grow a great deal in the south. And we're praying for the north. We're praying for things to change. And I hope you'll join with us in prayer. Current situation is kind of a bit of a stalemate. You know, some people worry about things happening. Refugees streaming across the border. China worries about that perhaps more than anyone else. Something like a Libyan situation happening. But God can bring transformation. So, where do we fit into everything? Well, in the south, people just carry on with life. They've got lots of things to do. You can see they're enjoying the beach there with all their McDonald's umbrellas. And it's a big, big, busy city. You know, it's just the south is a totally different world than the north. Seoul is a sprawling city of about 22 million people, roughly the size of Greater Toronto, but with about 22 million people in it. So it's, you know, it's kind of a mixture of high-rises and apartments and buildings, office buildings and so forth, lots of cars. You have to go out kind of to the city to see some of these nice, tranquil places along the way. So we don't live too far away from the very center of Seoul, which is that little mountain with that tower on it. And I'll show you a map here so you can see where we're at. Give it a moment. Well, let me just finish here. Yes, it has a really, really good subway system, really good transit, all that. There's 13 lines in the subway, and I think maybe 500 stops, and it's about 90 cents. So you can ride the subway all over the city, 90 cents, $1, or something like that, even all the way out to the airport, which is probably an hour and a quarter ride. That only costs about $3. So they have a really good transit system. So we live in the center of Seoul, very close to that tower, and in apartments that the school has for teachers, not only the teachers living there, but teachers, a number of families live in this block. We're very fortunate that, as you can see, there's that green strip there on the right-hand picture. That green strip is just inside our apartment compound area, whatever, and that is kind of rare to have that many trees and everything right close to the apartments. We consider ourselves very blessed, and certainly after living in Honduras, which was all lush and green, we're really thankful for that. There's lots of parks close by, but first let's go to the school. Yongsan International School of Seoul is a member of the network of international Christian schools. It's an international school, but it's a Christian school. And in the spring, of course, lots of beautiful plum blossoms and cherry blossoms and so forth. Within about a mile, there would be probably 40 embassies in our neighborhood. And of course, a lot of our students come from embassy workers, from diplomatic families, and come from all over the world. Diplomatic families are usually posted for about 2 years, 3 years, occasionally more, but usually 2 or 3. So we have all these students coming. They're there a couple of years, then they go on to some other country. One of my students the other year was Marcia. Marcia was born in Angola, lived in Germany, lived in Mexico, lived in the United States, and now lives in Korea. And she could speak the tribal language of Angola, she could speak Portuguese, she could speak German, she could speak Spanish, she could speak English, she was learning Korean for fun, and a lot of those young people can speak 3 languages. That's the way it is, because they've lived in many different countries. The other thing we notice is that, you know, the students will come, oh, hi, you know, where have you been? You know, some of them have met each other at some other school somewhere. But the main thing is that, you know, they make friends very quickly, but when the time comes to go, it's just like, okay, see you, bye, you know, we'll see you on Facebook or something, and it's kind of goodbye, because they know they're only there for 2 or 3 years. So it's a very fluid school, kind of a student body, but we have some great opportunities, and those kids will go on around the world. We have all these flags in the foyer. This coming year, there will be students from 51 countries in our school. So this past year, there was 46. So they have flags from all different countries. The key thing is the parents want them to be educated in English. They want, you know, a high academic standing. So that is really the main drawing card. They're willing, or sometimes they really want a Christian environment as well, but not all of them. They just want to be sure their kids are educated in English, a good school, and so we have this great opportunity to meet these families from all over And along with the education, of course, then the opportunity to share the gospel with them. So, anyway, this I've already pretty well covered. Here's a bunch of our students. They just graduated the day before, so they're looking kind of silly and having fun. The girl on the left, Carla, she's from Brazil, and then there's Nabil, he was born in Fiji, and Zach in the States, and there's the center boy here is from Japan, the boy behind Roland, he's from Nigeria, and then the girl at the back, she's from Colombia, and there's some more. The girl with her tongue sticking out her mother is a Thai ambassador. I don't know if her mom would like that picture too much, but anyway, they're from all over. You know, kids are kids, students are students, and they were just happy to be graduated, that's some of them anyway. Well, what are our roles? I teach Christian theology in high school, and I also teach philosophy and logic to what we call Oasis, and I'll talk about that in a moment. I have about 100 students on a weekly basis. And Carol is the elementary chaplain. She has chapels and assemblies, about 400 kids in the elementary school. There's about 1,000 kids in the school altogether, so 400, 300 middle school, 300 high school. Now, what is a little bit different about our school is that we have what we call Oasis. So 2/3 of our students are in the Christian curriculum, programming, and all of that. 2/3. 1/3 is an Oasis, which means their families are from many other religious backgrounds. They don't want their children to be forced to worship Jesus. They don't often know anything about Jesus, and or they're from other religions. But they want their kids to be in the school. So the school said, okay, we'll have Oasis. You can come to the school. We'll have character education in some ways, but you need to know all of our teachers are Christians. And there will be Christian discipleship things going on and Christian outreach and so forth. And the parents feel, okay, I want to be in the school. It has a good reputation, so put our kids in Oasis. Well, the kids take all their classes together other than for some of the Bible and Oasis classes. So they're mixing together all the time. And there's all these students we had from Saudi Arabia this past year, you know, they're become great friends with their Christian kids. And they all hang out together. And so it's kind of a unique situation, but it's a great window of opportunity for us. Certain times of the year, we have some combined events, like for instance at Christmas. Christmas, we're going to sing Christmas carols because it's Christmas. It's a significant holiday. And our church, or our school is a Christian school. So here, last year, I remember coming to the Christmas program, and there's these little kids from Saudi Arabia. They're singing Christmas carols. Their parents are all clapping for them because, hey, you know, parents always clap for kids, right? So it's kind of unique. Oasis is kind of a intermediate step into our culture, but it gives us lots of opportunities then to rub shoulders, make friends, do things together. And I really believe those students have heard the gospel and will be taking the seeds that are planted with them. The Saudi students, there was about 20 of them, Saudi Arabian students. They were there for 2 years with the oil company, working in Korea. Their parents were with the oil company. And then they went back to Saudi Arabia this summer. So what will they remember? What will they take with them? It'll be interesting to see. We certainly became friends with them. Carol, as you know, is the elementary chaplain. Now, she's one of a number of chaplains. There is a spiritual head director, a spiritual director for the school, and then we have high school chaplain, middle school chaplain, elementary chaplain, and 2 Oasis directors. So there's 6 people on the spiritual life committee. And Mr. Birmingham is the head. He kind of coordinates all those. These others have their own roles and responsibilities. This year, Carol, we'll just run through quickly what she did. There, she was focused on the way of the wise, what the Bible says about Jesus, wisdom, foolishness, all kinds of different themes that way. This was at Easter time when we're having the Easter program. We're very fortunate. We have a nice new building. The school is pretty large, and this is the character or Oasis side of things. There's a bunch of little kids there. And, you know, they learn a lot of virtuous things, honesty and being faithful in different ways and so forth. But I would not say that it's not specifically an evangelistic program, but it's kind of a foundation upon which teachers can kind of build and point them to other things and answer questions when students have questions. Well, there's not much finesse when it comes to the food. I shouldn't say it that way. The food is very, very spicy, very hot and spicy. You'd probably burn your mouth the first few times you try it, because they use a lot of the red cayenne pepper, a lot of strange flavors or different flavors than what we might be used to here. Pickled things like pickled radishes. You can imagine pickled radishes, okay. That's kind of good. And pickled radishes soaked in red cayenne pepper. You can really get a charge out of that. So it's very different. It's a different flavor. It takes a while to get used to. And we all enjoy it, but it's taken some time to get used to. And then the spraying happens again. So they saw it over and over again. I don't want to minimize it. It's just that it's a matter of, it's a case to pray for them. But it's something that people have seen for a long, long time. If you were to go to the demilitarized zone, or sometimes called the DMZ, you would find there's a strip of land right across the peninsula, right across from East Sea to the other sea, and that's 4 kilometers wide. And that is a very, very heavily guarded, highly militarized. In our school cafeteria, we can choose either Western menu or Eastern menu, Korean menu. And I would say by now, we almost always get the Korean menu. It's healthier, it's good food, but it took a while to get used to. Some people say, well, don't they use the Chinese alphabet? Well, no, it's the Korean alphabet. It's created around 700 years ago. It has 24 characters. It's actually quite simple compared to Japanese or Chinese. It's quite easy to learn, at least to read the letters and the sounds and so forth. We know a little bit of Korean. All of our teaching and all of our classes are in English in school, so we don't need to know that much, but we're learning to get around the taxi or in the marketplace or, 안녕하세요, 감사합니다, whatever, hello, thank you. It's all to be polite, and we're going to continue to learn, but it isn't a real impetus upon us to learn as quick as possible. So, in recent history, many of you would know about the Korean War. Canada took part in the Korean War on behalf of the United Nations. And a lot of people don't realize, though, that it never ended in a peace treaty. It just ended in an armistice or a ceasefire. So all these years, technically, these two countries are still at war. And every now and then something flares up, something happens, and there's a big kerfuffle, and then, well, things kind of settle down again. A lot of times there's a big concern here in the West, but in the East, they kind of take it in stride to some degree. We have friends who lived there for 14 years, and they said, well, every spring there's kind of like a saber rattling. It's almost like a ritual. Every spring there's a big, war of words for a while, and then things calm down. And sometimes in the fall there's another thing that happens, and they all calm down for the winter time.